All right, guys, so we are finally here. The final story for Supreme Power Universe, Supreme Power Volume 3. This is basically the return of Hyperion. Now, if you're new to my channel and you have no idea what the Supreme Power Universe is, let me explain. So when it comes to supreme power, it is basically a universe out there that holds a particular version of the Squadron Supreme. Now remember, the Squadron Supreme is a team of characters that were made by Marvel Comics as a way to represent the heroes of DC Comics and Marvel Comics. Now with that being said, there are many different versions of the team in Marvel's multiverse. But when it comes to the Supreme Power Universe, it's just one of the many universes that hold a version of the Squadron Supreme. Now, we have been covering a lot of content of this particular universe. And matter of fact, we have a complete playlist of this particular universe. But this is the final story of this universe. Now, at this point in our coverage, we have to remember this comes after the Hyperion War. Now remember, the Hyperion War was basically a war that Hyperion did on the rest of the Earth, because Hyperion felt like the reason why the Earth is failing right now because of regular humans. And the only way to save the Earth and lead it into a better direction is if the people with powers actually take over the Earth and get rid of the regular people. Now with that being said though, this led into the Hyperion War, or better known as the Marvel versus DC War. And what I mean by that is because in that universe, the characters of the Squadron Supreme are basically characters that represent DC heroes. You did have a new wave of heroes rise up in this universe. And the new wave of heroes were basically characters that represent Marvel characters. And so, for example, in this universe, you had a character known as Old Soldier, but he was just the Captain America of this universe. You had a guy known as Bio General, but he was the Iron Man of this universe. And so because of the new wave of heroes, they were basically being led by Nick Fury from the Ultimate Marvel Universe, who was trapped in this universe to fight against Hyperion before he was actually able to take over the Earth. And so you had a civil war, or better known as the Hyperion War. Now Hyperion lost, but on his side he had the DC characters fighting against the heroes from Marvel. And of course at the end of that, the heroes of DC lost and Hyperion just disappeared. And so right now in America, it's a new fresh start after the Hyperion War. And so when we finally jump into the first chapter of this storyline, we actually do pick up right now with Dr. Spectrum being the last hero in America. Now, the reason why I'm saying that, because remember, at the end of the Hyperion War, most of the heroes lost their powers. Now, the heroes who lost their powers were basically characters that were made to represent Marvel characters in this universe. Either way, they lost their powers at the end of the Hyperion War. Now, the heroes who kept their powers, we have no idea what exactly happened to them. But you can kind of tell that right now in America, heroes are superpower beings are not loved right now in America. And the reason why, because what Hyperion did in the last storyline. For example, he blew up the White House. Now, technically, when it did blow up, it was because he was in a huge battle. Either way, when the White House blew up, it was only a few minutes after you had Hyperion say, I'm here to basically take over the Earth. Now, either way, with America right now technically hating on heroes, Dr. Spectrum is barely getting a pass. And the reason why, because he works for the military. And so right now, the public's more of like, okay, listen, because he's with the military and they kind of have him under control, we can kind of believe in him. But at the same time though, he is technically still a superpower being. Now, something else to mention about Dr. Spectrum is that where his powers come from. And what I mean by that is when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, you have to remember his powers comes from a crystal, because most of the heroes in this universe got their powers thanks to some kind of airborne virus that came out of Hyperion spaceship. But when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, he got his powers from a crystal that's right now stuck inside his hand. And that crystal was actually the power source to Hyperion spaceship. Either way though, when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, his powers comes from that crystal. Now this crystal is going to be very important for the storyline down the road. And I'll explain more why as we go through this book. Now, here's the thing. Dr. Spectrum is being interviewed by different people left and right. And there is a good reason why. Because even though you have Dr. Spectrum going around saving lives and being that great hero, you right now have the public asking, and technically in all these interviews, they're asking him, are you different than Hyperion? Now, the reason why they're asking him that question because what Hyperion did just moments ago in the last storyline, trying to take over the Earth. Now, of course, you do have Dr. Spectrum say, yes, I am different. But the problem is, though, to the public, but how? Because Hyperion was also a hero. And then later on, he was no longer a hero, and he was actually trying to take over the Earth. And so right now, even though you're calling yourself a hero, sooner or later, you're going to go bad just like him and try to take over the Earth. When is that time going to come? Now, you do have Dr. Spectrum say, but I'm different. And the reason why, because Hyperion was not human. I am human. And that was his problem right there. Because with him not being human, he had a harder time fitting in. He had a harder time understanding us. And so because of that, that is why he changed. That is why he was no longer a hero and trying to take over the Earth. Because he felt like he knew what was best for us. In reality, he did not. And so to answer your question, if I'm different, yes, I am very different because I'm one of you guys. Yes, I have powers, but I'm still human. And on top of that, I'm here to protect America. Now, like I said earlier though, when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, we have to remember that basically he works for the military. And so even though he's out there being a hero for the public, he's also doing different kinds of military missions. And so right now we actually pick up with General Alexander, who's right now meeting up with some other high-ranking people in the government. And right now they're discussing a certain kind of military mission that's right now happening in a different country. And of course, they want to send in Dr. Spectrum to handle this particular problem. But of course, before they're able to actually go through this mission, they have to get the green light from the president. And of course, you do have the president say, yes, go ahead and complete this mission. And so we then jump over to Dr. Spectrum flying over to a particular country and just land there and begin to fight against their forces in that country. Now, technically at first, you're kind of wondering, okay, what is the military actually doing? Because right now it seems like they're sending in Dr. Spectrum to be this weapon to deal with other countries who are technically trying to attack America down the road or in a possible future. Either way though, right now, that is the moment we kind of find out why Dr. Spectrum is here in this country. And so we kind of find out that technically the reason why Dr. Spectrum was sent here to this other country was to go after a power being known as Malik. And Malik does have super strength and maybe some other powers we don't see in this particular section. And matter of fact, we're not going to see it. And the reason why, because he is about to die. But that is the reason why Dr. Spectrum is here for, to basically take him down. Now, here's the thing though, because at first Malik is able to get the upper hand on Dr. Spectrum, but then something clicks in the mind of Dr. Spectrum. And that is the moment we have to remember that when it comes to Dr. Spectrum and his powers, it all comes from the crystal. But on top of that, the crystal does have a mind of its own. And on top of that, the crystal is trying to actually help out Hyperion rule over the earth or do something else with the earth. Either way right now, you have the crystal actually take over the body of Dr. Spectrum. Now, when it does that, of course, it does kill off Malik, this other power being that belongs to this country. But at the same time, you have the crystal say, soon the child is going to be here, meaning that something big is about to happen thanks to Hyperion. The question is though, what? Because let's not forget, after Hyperion War, he just disappeared. Now that is the moment where we actually do learn a little bit more about the world after the Hyperion War. And what I mean by that is, after the Hyperion War had happened and ended, you had the United Nations come together. Now, when they came together, you did have the United Nations technically say that we need some kind of law to kind of keep the superpower beings in check, just in case another Hyperion pops up and wants to take over the Earth, which honestly is a good idea. The problem was though, Syria did not want to follow this new law. And so that explains why Dr. Spectrum was there in that country to deal with that problem right there. They had a power being that was causing a lot of problems in their country, but also other countries nearby as well. And so of course, Dr. Spectrum had to step in and take care of that problem. But then we actually pick up with Dr. Spectrum, who's right now freaking out the general. And the reason why, because he's just floating in the middle of this military base, not saying anything and not doing anything at all either. He's just floating there. And of course, it's right now the general wondering, what in the world's wrong with Dr. Spectrum, Joseph Ledger? Now we know what's wrong with him. It's the crystal. It has taken over his body completely right now. But of course, they don't know that. Now, when they call out to Joseph, aka Dr. Spectrum, that is the moment he comes back to. He's able to regain control of his body. Now, once he does that, he's confused about what happened. And that reminds us that when it comes to the crystal, when it does take over his body, Joseph has no idea what's going on or what the crystal has done while taking over his body, like right now. And so, of course, with that happening, you have the general say, okay, I want to know what is going on with him and that crystal right now. And so, of course, he tells Dr. Steedman, a character we have not seen in a long time, but the same doctor that had worked on Dr. Spectrum, and say, hey, Steedman, I want to know everything about that crystal and his connection to that crystal, because right now he's the last hero in America, and right now we're trying to make him the best hero in America right now. And so of course, if he goes crazy, it's going to break America again, the public, because they watch one hero fail. Now they could possibly watch another hero fail, and that right there is kind of scary. And so you do have the military run a few tests on Dr. Spectrum to learn more about him and the crystal. Now, of course, after a few tests, you then have Dr. Mitchell walk in. Now, Dr. Mitchell is going to ask him a series of questions. Now, these questions are really more trying to figure out about the mind connection between the crystal and Dr. Spectrum, because she wants to know, how does it work? You're telling me the crystal has a mind of its own, but on top of that, it has the ability to take over your body. Can you explain that a tad bit more? Now, for Joseph Ledger, honestly, he can't, because when it comes to the crystal, it hasn't done this in a very long time, which honestly is correct, because we haven't seen this happen in a very long time. And we covered a lot of stories, and years have passed by in this universe as we cover the different stories. And so right now he's saying, listen, this has not happened in years. I will admit this though, I always felt the mind of the crystal in the back of my mind, but at the same time though, I still had control over my body. This right here is actually new. And so right now, the question is, okay, why did the crystal come back now? Or why is it trying to take over your body now? Now, of course, you have Mitchell ask one last question. Do you like being a hero? And he says no. But the only reason why he is doing it because someone has to do it. Someone has to be the hero. And unfortunately, thanks to Mark, it's hard for me to prove to the public that I'm trying to be a hero and not a bad guy. But either way, though, he says, I don't like this life, but unfortunately, someone has to live the life as a hero. But let's not forget what I said earlier though, or really at the very beginning of this video, about the idea of Hyperion. And what I mean by that is, after the Hyperion War, Hyperion just disappeared. No one knew what happened to him. Well, we come to find out, Hyperion is right now living a new life somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And matter of fact, he has a new girlfriend as well. Now, this girlfriend of his has no idea who he is. She has no idea that he is Hyperion. He is technically starting a complete new life in this area he's in right now. Unfortunately, we come to find out there are two people out in the forest who were able to get a picture of him. And because of that, they say, hey, we just found Hyperion and we need to tell the world about this. And of course, this is going to lead into a huge problem because Hyperion was trying to live a new life of just peace and quiet. And unfortunately, his new life or his new cover had just got blown. Now, when we jump into the second chapter of the storyline, we actually do pick up right now with the United Nations actually arguing about what America did. Because technically right now, Syria is very upset with America sending in Dr. Spectrum to take out, of course, their superpower being. Now, of course, to America and the rest of the UN, they felt like they had the right to actually do that because Syria was not following the guidelines. But of course, for Syria, they still feel like America did not have the right to step in. And so that is the moment where we actually do pick up right now with Dr. Spectrum having a nightmare. Now, this is one heck of a nightmare. And the reason why, because it's Dr. Spectrum right now in this nightmare walking around a dead city. Now, with this city being completely destroyed and everybody dead in this city, while he's walking around, he does find a random prison cell. Now, when he looks inside the prison cell, he sees himself. Here's the catch though. Even though he's locked away in his cell, he's not wearing his Dr. Spectrum outfit or even his new one. He's right now wearing Hyperion's old outfit. And that right there is very strange. Now, of course, at the end of the nightmare, he does wake up, but he wakes up right after you have the crystal appear in his nightmare saying soon. Something is going to happen soon. And when he wakes up, he comes to find out that he had destroyed the entire second floor of this building that he was kept in. But then we jump over to the general. Now, when we do, it's the general right now in a meeting. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's all about the idea that right now, did America actually kill off the power being known as Malik from Syria because they couldn't have him? Because remember, originally, when it came to the power beings in the Supreme Power Universe, the first few popped up in America. And of course, America was able to grab them and say, you now work for the American military. But then other ones began to pop up across the world. And of course, America couldn't get those. And so right now, there's a theory out there that the reason why America has stepped in Syria and sent in Dr. Spectrum was to kill off that power being because America couldn't get him. And so right now, you have the general freaking out. But then things get even crazier because right now, photos have been released across the world about the idea that some photographer and reporter were able to actually find Hyperion, that technically he's still on Earth. The public had no idea what happened to him. and now they know that Mark Milton is alive. Hyperion is alive. But then we jump over to Hyperion, who's right now living this new life in the middle of nowhere. Now, with that being said though, you do have Hyperion right now actually thinking back to his past life, when he was Hyperion, when he was a superhero, helping out the military, helping out the public, being this hero, but at the same time thinking about the moments where he turned bad, because there were a couple moments where he did actually turn bad. Either way though, he's thinking about his past life and wondering, how did he get to this point in his life? Now, while he's outside actually thinking about that, well, that is the moment he realized there's two people right now hiding in the forest nearby his cabin. And of course, it's the two people who have been basically taking photos of him and releasing those photos to the public. And of course, you do have one of the guys say, yeah, man, listen, we took photos of you and we had actually released those photos over to our boss and most likely to the public. The world now knows that you are technically still alive and on Earth right now. Now, of course, you do have Hyperion kill off one of the guys, but then you have Hyperion say to the other guy, leave now. But show your boss or tell your boss, this is a warning. Do not come back here and do not tell the world that basically I am alive. Now, that is the moment where you do have the book begin the process of technically telling us how Hyperion was able to start a new life and how he was able to meet his new girlfriend, Anna, or Anna. I want to say it's Anna. Either way though, when it comes to Hyperion, this flashback is kind of telling us about how they first met. And of course, she was very worried about him. Now, this shows right off the bat that when it comes to Hyperion, even though he was the big time hero in America, not every single person actually knew him. But on top of that though, he did change his appearance. And so because of that, she had no idea who he was. And matter of fact, he tells her, my name is Mason, which honestly is not the truth. Either way, you have Anna begin to wonder, who is this man? And apparently this began the process of the two characters falling in love with one another. But then we jump back over to the general. Now, when we do, it is technically right now the general meeting up with the president. Now, the reason why, because you have the president basically talking about the idea that with Mark Milton being out there and alive, they need to go ahead and take care of him. Send someone out there to technically stop him. Now, of course, the only person they have is Dr. Spectrum. But honestly, they're afraid about the idea that Hyperion might come back and finish what he started. Now, the president does have the reason to be worried. And the reason why, because the last president before him was killed off by Hyperion technically. And so, of course, right now, it's the president saying, listen, the person who was in charge before me died by the hands of this man right here, who wanted to take over the earth. He hated regular people. And so we have no idea if he might come back and try to finish the job. And so I want Dr. Spectrum ready to go, and just in case Hyperion comes here to attack me or anywhere else in America. So get your boy ready to fight just in case. But then we jump over to Dr. Spectrum. Now, of course, you do have the military right now still running tests on him to make sure that everything is a-okay. Now, with that being said though, while you have Dr. Steeman right now running these tests on him to make sure that everything is a-okay, of course, that is the moment you have the general call up Steeman and say, hey man, we just got word that technically Hyperion is alive and well. And of course, his pictures are right now being shared with the public. The story has been broken out to the world right now, and this could only lead to worse things happening down the road. And so, of course, the president wants Dr. Spectrum prepped and ready to just in case to fight against Hyperion. Here comes the big problem though, because while you have Dr. Steeman on the phone, he left the TV on. And with the TV being on, of course, Dr. Spectrum sees what's happening right now. Hyperion has been found. And so because of that, the crystal goes crazy and takes over the body of Dr. Spectrum. And of course, there is a huge explosion. And so that is the moment where we actually jump back over to Hyperion. Now, When we jump back over to Hyperion, it is him right now just trying to fly away. He's trying to get far away from that cabin before, of course, the American military arrived and tried to bring him in, or try to attack him, and Anna gets hurt. Either way, he's trying to fly away from his problems. The problem is, though, while he is flying away, that is the moment he's confronted by Dr. Spectrum. The problem is, though, it's not Joseph Ledger right now in charge of the body. Right now, it is the crystal. And so right now, you have the crystal telling Hyperion, it is your time. It is your time to basically take over the earth. We are here for you. We are here to guide you. Now, of course, you do have Hyperion kind of realize that this is not Joseph Ledger, but at the same time, he's wondering what in the world is the crystal actually talking about? Because remember, we don't know the origin of Hyperion at all. We have no idea why he was sent to Earth in the first place. Now, we did get flashbacks or flashes of possible futures of why he was sent here to technically take over the world. And right now it seems like the crystal is trying to tell him the same thing, like, hey, it is your time to complete your mission, to take over the earth. But then we jump over to another country. Now, when we do, we actually pick up with some random guy who's right now talking about the idea of Hyperion being some kind of god. That technically with Hyperion coming back, because now the public knows that he is still on Earth and he's out there somewhere, that this guy looks up to Hyperion as a god. And he says that Hyperion will lead us into a new direction, a new age. And we come to find out this guy right here is a power being. Now, I really can't show you what he does in this section because it's very brutal. He technically blows up people left and right. That is his power. He can literally blow you up. But apparently he's right now talking about the idea that with Hyperion being back, Hyperion is going to lead him and other power beings across the world to basically take over the world. Now, when we jump into the third chapter of this storyline, we actually do pick up with Dr. Spectrum in the middle of the woods. Now, we are told that this takes place way after he had ran into Hyperion. But of course, it was the crystal who had taken over the body of Dr. Spectrum to go confront Hyperion. And so right now you have Dr. Spectrum just getting flashbacks of what the crystal did when he was asleep. Of course, that huge explosion when the American military was running tests on him. And of course, in that explosion, he also killed off Dr. Steedman. But on top of that, he does see flashes of when the crystal had took over his body and confronted Hyperion. Now, the crystal is trying to tell Dr. Spectrum, you need to go find Hyperion. You need to tell him it's time for him to rule. We're here to technically help him. But of course, you have Dr. Spectrum actually ignoring the crystal. But then we jump over to General Alexander. Now, when we do, we actually do pick up right now with General Alexander meeting up with other officials about the idea of how they're going to bring in Hyperion back in their fold, back under their control. And the reason why they're having this discussion right now, because Dr. Spectrum had technically gone AWOL. I mean, literally, the crystal had taken over his body, caused a huge explosion at a testing site, and then just flew away. And so right now, this is General Alexander saying, we need to find a way to bring in Hyperion, but to also hopefully take out Dr. Spectrum. But on top of that, though, we also need to find a way to fix the reputation of Hyperion. Because let's not forget, the public technically hates him right now for what he did to the last president. Either way, it's also the general saying we need to hurry up before others try to move in and actually recruit Hyperion to their side and use him against us. Now we do jump back over to Hyperion, and when we do, it's technically Hyperion right now kind of concerned about what is going to happen next. Now Anna, his girlfriend, has a lot of questions because she had no idea that he was Hyperion. but now he knows. Sorry, now she knows, not he. Either way, with her now knowing the idea that her boyfriend is some kind of superpower being, and most likely Hyperion, she's kind of like, okay, what do I call you? Because when I met you, you told me your name was Mason, but here you are right now, you're technically not Mason. You're someone else. You had a life before this life right here. So do I actually know you? Now that is the moment where we do jump over to the character we saw at the very end of the last chapter. The one who technically blew up people left and right because he believes that Hyperion is going to lead them into a brand new world where the power beings are the rulers of the world. Either way, we do see him right now meeting up with the leaders of Syria. By the way, his name is Ruse. Anyways though, when it comes to Ruse, he's meeting up with the leaders of Syria, who are right now trying to recruit him to become their new power being to use against other countries. Because of his abilities, he could be a very powerful being to use against other countries. The problem is though, this guy right now does not want to be their hero or be their power being or their weapon. Instead, he's here right now to say, I'm here to technically show you guys or give you guys a message that technically your time is up. We're in a new world, a world where the power beings are going to rule over this world. And so that is the moment he kills every single person in the room. Just like that. He's all like, and soon Hyperion is going to lead us in the right direction. Our time to rise is here now. And so that is the moment where we jump over to Hyperion. Now, when we do, it is technically right now Hyperion meeting up with the General Alexander. Now, this is where things get pretty interesting, guys. And the reason why, because when we actually pick up with this meeting, is right now the General saying, hey man, listen, why not go ahead and rejoin us? Rejoin the military and work with us. Now, of course, you have Hyperion say no. And matter of fact, this is Hyperion saying, this is your only chance I'm going to give you guys. Meaning that go ahead and leave now, because if you don't, I'm going to kill you guys. And on top of that, if you guys come back here again, I'm going to basically kill you guys. So take this one chance and get the heck out of here. Now, of course, when it comes to the General, he's not going to leave. Matter of fact, he's going to stay and try his best to recruit Hyperion back into the military. And matter of fact, he tells Hyperion, we can bring you back in. And matter of fact, we can prove that you are innocent, because when it came to the Hyperion War, there was no actual hard evidence that you were the main bad guy of that event. Now, honestly, I have no idea how in the world they're going to fix that, because if I remember correctly, he announced to the entire world what he wanted to do. But apparently the military can just sweep that under the rug and play a game of, that was not really Hyperion, that was someone else. But you also have generals say, listen, you want to be left alone, but at the same time, you want to be with people. So why not come back with us so that you're able to actually be with people again? Either way, you have Hyperion say no, and the general leaves. Now, after that moment right there, we do see later on in the night, Hyperion was actually confronted by other power beings. Now, we have no idea if these power beings belong to other countries or the American military. And most likely, I'll say other countries who are trying to use these power beings as a way to technically bring them in and become their military weapon to use. Either way, when it comes to these other power beings right now, fighting against Hyperion, you have Hyperion show why he is the best hero. Not the best hero, but the best power being. Because technically, it was him and his spaceship that brought the powers to Earth. But on top of that, he is the Superman of this universe. Either way, you do have Hyperion being able to take out the power beings. But the fight was so big and so crazy that, of course, it did destroy the area that he was hiding in, and also blowing up the cabin that he had as well. Now that is a problem, and the reason why, because Anna was inside the cabin. So that is the moment where we actually jump back over to Dr. Spectrum. Now, when we do, we see him right now still AWOL, but on top of that, he went to a nearby diner. Now, when it comes to this diner, he's just trying to have a quiet night. The problem is though, while being at this diner, that is the moment the TV is talking about the idea of Hyperion. And of course, with the TV talking about that, you have the crystal once again activate and take over the body of Dr. Spectrum. Now, when that happens, of course, it's technically right now the crystal saying we need to protect him. We need to find him and help him lead this world in the right direction, with him being the ruler. And so when you have the crystal activate, the entire diner blows up, and now trying to lead Dr. Spectrum over to where Hyperion is at. Now, the last few pages of this chapter does jump back and forth between Dr. Spectrum and also Hyperion. And the reason why, because while you have Dr. Spectrum trying to ignore what the crystal is actually asking him, you have Hyperion checking up on Anna. Now, of course, Anna is okay, but the problem is though, Anna is scared of Hyperion. And the reason why, because she just watched her man basically fight against other power beings and actually killed them off. But on top of that though, she's kind of like, you lied to me. Here you are, this power being, but you're also a killer. And now I see what you are, a monster. And so of course, she leaves him alone. And so Hyperion is once again alone again after finding someone who could possibly love him the way he wanted to be loved. Now, on top of that though, when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, like I said a moment ago, he's trying to ignore the request of the crystal. And so of course, he then cuts off his hand as a way to cut ties with the crystal so that it can no longer take over him and control him. And so at the end of the 3rd chapter, Dr. Spectrum is technically no longer Dr. Spectrum. But on top of that though, Hyperion is alone again. And this could actually help the military bring him back in. And so that is the moment where we actually jump into the final chapter of this storyline. Now, when we do, we actually pick up right now with the character Ruse. And right now you have Ruse technically in Paris causing a lot of problems. He is technically attacking Paris. And the reason why, because Ruse truly believes that Hyperion is going to come back and lead an army of power beings to conquer the earth. And so right now you have Ruse saying, I am going to go ahead and begin my God's work. I'm going to go ahead and attack regular people left and right, starting here in Paris. Now, Paris does try to send in a power being to hopefully be able to stop Ruse. The problem is though, Ruse is more powerful than their power being, their speedster. And so he was able to take that guy out and continue on with his rampage, believing that he's doing Hyperion's work. But then we get back over to Hyperion. Now, when we do, we kind of find out that moments after the night where technically Anna wanted to leave Hyperion, he was able to rebuild the cabin very quickly. But on top of that, it seemed like he was able to briefly convince her to actually stay with him. Unfortunately, the next morning when he wakes up, she's leaving. She's all like, I'm done. I can't be here with you. And the reason why, because they're not going to leave you alone. They're terrified of you. I'm terrified of you. And so with that being said, I can't live a life where I'm scared of the man I love, but I'm also scared of the idea that other power beings are going to use me as a way to get to you. And so with that being said, I want to be left alone. And so she walks away and you have Hyperion just let her go. Now that is the moment where we do pick up with Dr. Spectrum waking up after cutting his hand off. And of course, when he does wake up, he is confronted by the general. Now this is the general basically saying, hey man, listen, we're happy we found you. And the reason why, because we have been looking for you for a good while. And luckily we did find you. But also you're very lucky because we were going to use our backup plan. And our backup plan was to activate a device that's right now inside your brain. And with that device, it has the ability to shut your brain down, technically killing you off just like that. But luckily for you, we did not do that. And we also found the crystal nearby you as well and brought it back in as well to continue the tests on. But then we jump over to Hyperion. Now when we do, it is technically right now Hyperion freaking out. And the reason why, because he's now alone again. And he's wondering, what in the world can I do with my life? The woman I found and believed that I could have a peaceful life with and love her as she loved me is now gone. But on top of that, the world now knows I'm still alive and well and on Earth. And of course, the world hates me because of my past mistakes. So what are my next moves? And of course, he realized his next move is to work with the military. And the reason why, because the American military can play games with the public in a way to say, hey guys, we were wrong about Hyperion. That technically Hyperion is not a bad guy. That Hyperion is actually a good guy. And we should give him a second chance. And what you saw a few years ago where he had attacked the White House, yeah, that was all fake. This guy right here, Hyperion, is a true American hero. It's them right now trying to fix everything that's wrong with Hyperion right now when it comes to the eye of the public. Now, right after he does rejoin the military, they do give him his first mission. And of course, his first mission is to go after Ruse, the guy right now who believes that Hyperion is going to lead an army of power beings to conquer the Earth. And honestly, that mission right there doesn't take that long, because you do have Hyperion find Ruse. And when he does find Ruse, he grabs Ruse just like that very quickly to begin their quick battle. Now for Ruse, he's very confused because he realized that right now Hyperion is working for the American military. And so to him, he's all like, you're not a pawn, you're a god. You could technically rule this earth. What are you doing? But at the same time, this is Hyperion just saying, listen, dude, I don't have time for you. I'm trying to prove to the American military that I'm theirs again, that they can use me for things like you, but also other things as well, so that I will not feel alone ever again. And so with him saying that, he grabs Ruse and throws him right into space, basically killing him off. And so Hyperion is back working for the American military once again. And so the next few pages are really more of Hyperion right now trying to be a hero, but to also change his image when it comes to the eye of the public, to show them, hey, listen, when it comes to Hyperion, he's not a bad guy. What you heard about the Hyperion War was not true. That in reality, he is actually a good guy, and you guys should give him another chance. And so right now, it's just Hyperion trying to prove that he is not a bad guy, that he is actually a good guy. Now, with that being said, though, at the same time, you have the president right now meeting up with General Alexander. Now, this meeting is actually very important. And the reason why, because right now, it's the president saying, I do not like the idea of having Hyperion working for the American military again. And the reason why, because it's the president saying he could snap one day and come back and kill us all once again. And so right now, it's the president saying, I want you to find a way to get Joseph Ledger back online. Have him refuse with the crystal once again, because he is the only person who was able to go toe to toe with Hyperion, and we need him back online now. Now, with that being said, though, you have the general saying this is a bad idea, because we just promised Hyperion that we're going to help him no longer be alone in this world. But here you are right now trying to have a backup weapon ready to go, and that weapon could go crazy and actually attack him. And if that happens, that right there is going to tick off Hyperion and then most likely kill us off. But unfortunately, you have the president say, listen here, Alexander, I want Joseph Ledger back up and going by the end of the week. Find a way to get that crystal back into his body right now. But then we actually pick up with Hyperion. Now, when we do see Hyperion right now just trying to relax and hoping that one day he'll be able to actually fix his image when it comes to the public. Now that is the moment where you do have a young boy want to get a picture with Hyperion. Unfortunately, before he's able to do that, Hyperion is actually grabbed by Dr. Spectrum, which means that yes, when it came to General Alexander, they did find a way to technically put the crystal back inside the body of Joseph Ledger. And of course, he's now Dr. Spectrum all over again. Now, with that being said, we come to find out the crystal is technically right now embedded inside the chest of Joseph Ledger. Either way, it does lead into a battle between the two characters. Now, when it comes to this battle, it does go on for a few pages. The problem is, though, is Dr. Spectrum saying, I can't believe that you actually came back. And you think the public is going to accept you, is going to forgive you for everything you did? You think it's going to be that easy? No, it will never be that easy. You will never be accepted on this planet because you're not one of us. You're not human. Now, while this fight is going on, it does seem like the crystal is also taking over the body of Hyperion and Dr. Spectrum at the same time. Either way, the battle does continue on. But at the end of the battle, we do see that technically there was a huge explosion, and we're left to believe that Dr. Spectrum had defeated Hyperion, or possibly it's now technically a tie. Now, the last 2 pages are technically a cliffhanger, and what I mean by that is we do kind of find out a couple things. First, General Alexander stepped down after the battle between Hyperion and Dr. Spectrum, but on top of that, we kind of find out Dr. Spectrum was able to actually defeat Hyperion, and right now Hyperion is locked up in some kind of prison cell. Now, this cell is actually very important because we saw the same cell in the nightmare of Dr. Spectrum. Because remember, when he had looked inside a prison cell in his nightmare, he saw himself, but his other self was wearing a Hyperion suit, and he had no idea why. Well, we kind of find out here in this section, because when Dr. Spectrum looks inside the prison cell of Hyperion, he does see Hyperion. But the thing is, though, both characters right now are being controlled by the crystal. And so that is why Dr. Spectrum saw himself in that nightmare, because both characters are being controlled by the crystal. And right now you have both characters say something big is coming. And when it does, it could most likely be over for your Earth. Either way, though, right now we see light years away, an army of spaceships are heading towards Earth. And of course, it seems like these people belong to Hyperion's race. And right now, they're about to invade the Earth, and Hyperion might be on their side. Unfortunately, that is the cliffhanger, and we do not get another story to wrap up what happened to our heroes in the Supreme Power universe. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.